Hello, Lancers. I'm Layla.
And I'm Zain.
And today we're here interviewing Supervisor Lusk.
Hi, Mr. Lusk. Thank you for coming here to John R. Lewis and having us speak to you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about being here.
Of course.
Would you like to tell everyone what you do?
Yeah, so I'm the Franconia District Supervisor. I've served in this role now for 3 years. We renamed the district recently. It used to be called Lee District, just like your high school used to be Robert E. Lee. Our district used to be called Lee District. So I'm proud to say that we now call it Franconia, just as you guys have a new name, John R. Lewis.
Yes.
We have a new name as well. So I think it's been an interesting 3 years. I've had to kind of weather the pandemic and then think about some issues that we've seen as a result of it and thinking about how we can best serve the residents who live here, giving them help with food, helping them get help with employment, training, and career path creation, and then just looking for ways to kind of provide new development and new opportunities across the entire district.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
So, first question.
Yes.
What's your favorite movie adaptation of a book and why?
Yeah, so when I was, I guess I was in 8th grade, I read Les Miserables, so Victor Hugo's work, and it was one of the first books that made me cry. Like I was reading it and literally just emotionally drenched after finishing it. And I had the opportunity to go and see the actual play at the Arena Stage, which was like in the 1990s, and I was just moved by it. But then I was really shocked that the musical movie adaptation was also very well done. So just appreciated how they kind of kept to the storyline and really that same emotion that I felt reading the book, I felt it watching the play and then also watching the movie. So pretty amazing.
I really like that, the musical.
Yes.
With Hugh Jackman, yeah.
Hugh Jackman was awesome.
Yes.
I didn't know he could sing.
Yeah.
He actually could sing.
Yeah. He's one of my favorite actors, actually.
He's very talented.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and the next question is, why did you decide to become a member of the Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, so I had worked in Fairfax County government for like 30 years up to that point. So I had been in economic development for 21, and I had the opportunity to help recruit some of the largest companies to Fairfax County, Microsoft, AWS, Amazon Web Services, companies like Splunk, Palo Alto Networks. So I got to put all these companies all across the county, but I couldn't get any of them to come to our district. They would not come to the Richmond Highway corridor in particular. I got some of them to come over to the Springfield area where the Metro Park facility is, near the Springfield Franconia Metro. Booz Allen is there, VSC, Caliber. There's a number of other companies that we help recruit to that location, but I just couldn't get them on the Richmond Highway corridor. So I had to make a decision. Do I continue to work, at the Economic Development Authority, help build out infrastructure in places like Reston, Tysons, and Herndon, or do I do something that supports my own community? So I decided that if I ran for the board, I could focus on making a difference in that area. So I've been working pretty doggedly to try to get opportunities for the residents who live on the Richmond Highway corridor to be able to get higher paying jobs.
Well, we're happy to have you as our supervisor and our board.
Oh, that's sweet. No, I enjoy representing you. So this is
Thank you.
It's an opportunity. I mean, I take it very seriously, and I think it's funny. I used to think about ministers are people who are called to serve in the ministry, but I think public service, if you do it properly, it's a calling too. You are called to serve the people that you represent, and I almost feel like there's a lot of similarities. Like you are responsible. Like I feel responsible for the residents who live in this district, and it's like if you're a minister, you're responsible for your parishioners, and you want to make sure they have all the things they need to be successful, and that's what I try to do as a member of the board. Try to meet the needs of the people who I see are most in need. I mean, it's fascinating too that in this role, you can start to acknowledge this county is a very wealthy county, and most people kind of look at it and go, wow, you know, we have one of the highest incomes. We have these places, you know, Mount Vernon on the Potomac. You got, you know, Great Falls and McLean, these huge houses, and people, you know, just living large, basically. But then you also acknowledge, and you have to see, that there's whole communities where they don't have any of that. Like along Richmond Highway Corridor, I have mobile home parks. People live in campers or in trailers, and they don't have the same opportunities, they don't have the same amenities, and I think that that is a problem, and I have to do something to help them have improvements in their quality of life. They need better roads, they need green space, they need parks, they need facilities, they need sewer connections, they need water connections, all the things that we have, you know, as county residents in other parts of the district and the county. And then there's this group of folks, and there's thousands of them. I have the largest mobile home park in the county, and I have the highest number of any district in all of Fairfax County.
Well, that's important to have that our help in the community.
Yeah, was there any specific, like one person or one company who helped you on your journey for supervisor?
So I worked for, he's Congressman Jerry Conley, I think you guys might know him. So I was his land use and zoning aide back in the 1990s. So he gave me this really great opportunity. He basically called me into his office. He won the special election, and he was asking me a whole bunch of questions about human services, because I was the human services guy.
Yeah.
And I had, you know, been working in human services for about 4 years. And he, at the end of the conversation, he goes, "You're hired." And I said, "Hired? Hired to do what?" And he's like, "Land use and zoning." And I looked at him and I said, you know, like, I don't know anything about land use and zoning. And he's like, "I have it on good authority. You're the right person for the job." And he said something like, "We'll learn together." And he goes, "You gotta give me an answer. You gotta tell me, you wanna do this?" And I was smart. I went home, I thought about it. I talked to my friend Walter Alcorn from college. And Walter said, you know, I was single at the time. I didn't have any responsibilities other than myself. So Walter's like, "Why not? I mean, you have nothing to lose. I mean, if it doesn't work, then you go do something else. You go back to human services." So I took the job, loved it, absolutely loved it. And I learned about planning and development in Tyson's Corner and Merrifield. And what I did not know when he hired me is that he hired me to do the most complicated planning and development in all of Fairfax County. The number 1 business center was Tyson's, and the number 3 business center was Merrifield's. So in one district, we had the number 1 and number 3 centers. So we had the most cases. Every meeting, I was like juggling 15, I had as many as 20 cases in one meeting. And we got through them together, and I ended up working in the Economic Development Authority after that for 21 years, and then voila, I'm here. So Jerry was the person who helped me understand the role of the supervisor. He helped me when I made the decision to run. He was the first person to endorse me. He was there for me in raising money and doing all the events that I did as a candidate. So he was probably, if you ask who's the most influential and most helpful, I would say it was Jerry Conley.
Well, that's awesome. What college did you attend?
University of Virginia.
Why did you attend that?
Well,
You're all the way here now.
Yeah, so you'll laugh at this maybe. So when I was in 4th grade, I'm going to tell you guys something about me that most people don't know. I was in 4th grade. I was not a very good student. I was having a lot of trouble. My parents were having some issues, and they eventually got divorced, and I ended up moving to Alexandria, to Old Town, to live with my grandmother and my grandfather, my mother and my brother. We all lived together. So my grandparents were just amazing. They basically spent time helping me understand that I have, responsibility to help other people. I have a responsibility to represent them when I go out in the community, and I have a responsibility to be the best student that I can be. And my grandmother and I were talking one night. I was in 5th grade at the time, and we had these different placemat settings. And one was like Mount Vernon, there was a lighthouse in Virginia, there was a state capitol, and then the one that was the most interesting to me was the University of Virginia. There was a picture of the rotunda, and I think it was the east lawn, and then part of the west lawn was in the picture, but the way they did it was mostly the east lawn. So my grandmother and I, looking at the picture, I said, "Grammy, that place is beautiful." And she goes, "You can go there." And I said, "You know, you're right, Grammy, I'm going to the University of Virginia." So I tell my teacher the next day, my 5th grade teacher, my grandmother and I decided last night, I'm going to the University of Virginia. And my teacher said, "I need to talk to you after class." So she pulls me aside. I'm in 5th grade. She pulls me aside and she says, "You have to be very focused and you have to work really hard. And if you commit and you have mostly A's and B's and you have activities," and I said, "Activities? What activities?" I didn't know what she was talking about. So she explained it to me. She basically gave me like the blueprint, the roadmap. So I cataloged everything she said, everything. And every year I would have like a little scorecard on how I was doing on each of those things. So I would go back and give her a report. This is how I'm doing in my classes. This is what I'm doing for activities. And lo and behold, I get to my junior year, and I'm meeting with my guidance counselor, and she's like, "Where do you want to go to college?" I said, "University of Virginia." And she goes, "Okay." She looked at my grades and everything, and she goes, "Yeah, you got a chance, but I don't know, I can't promise you'll get in." And she goes, "Where else do you want to go?" I said, "Nowhere else." And she goes, "No, you can't do that." I says, "That's the only school I want to go to." She goes, "You can't pick just one school." So I applied to William & Mary and a couple of other ones. So I applied to 4. She convinced me to apply to 4 schools, but I only really wanted to apply to 1. So I get in, and they have what they call spring fling. So I go and visit the university in April. So like they admit you in April, and they have like at the very end of the month, they have this program you could come and meet other students, and it's like a program for minority students. So I get there, and my mother is with me, and we're walking out, and I see the lawn for the first time. So the rotunda, the east and the west lawn, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's like gorgeous. It's like even more beautiful than I had ever known or expected." So we took a tour, and we go around the east lawn, we go around the rotunda, and we go down to the west lawn, and they stop at the last door on the west lawn. It's room 55. Knock on the door, and there's a guy named Rodney Akers. So Rodney's African American. He's been just extraordinarily successful. His 4 years at UVA, he's vice president student council. He lives on the lawn. He's going to Harvard Law School, and he says, "I've had 4 great years here. If you work hard, you can be successful. You can do all these great things." And my mother whispers in my ear something like, "You can do that, or you can be like him." And I literally, my stomach like dropped, and I was like, this guy, like, to me, he like walked on water. I mean, this guy is like, I don't know, I can't do that. So fast forward 4 years later, I am vice president of student council, the same position that Rodney Akers had. And it wasn't like I planned it exactly, but it happened. I lived on the lawn, and you get selected to live on the lawn, and then you pick the number of your room out of a hat. So I picked the number out of the room, and my number was 55. So I ended up living in Rodney Akers' room.
Wow.
And the dean, the provost called him and said, "When you come back to visit UVA, you have to visit this guy who's in your room." And he knocked on my door. I opened the door, and he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I remember you." And it was crazy, but he was outside my door, and he convinced me, he made me realize that I could do some things at UVA. So just amazing. So that's why I went to UVA. My grandmother, and then the story with Rodney, and now I'm here in Fairfax.
That must have been an awesome experience.
Yeah.
So, what was the inspiration of changing
Yes.
Lee District to Franconia District?
Yeah, so I'll say this. I mean, I think the names matter, and we came to visit Lewis in January of 2020. So just before the pandemic, I came to visit with the new principal, and when we walked into the school, there was a portrait of Robert E. Lee in the front entrance, and I remember looking over my shoulder and like, the students have to look at that portrait every day. Like, you guys had to come in here and look at that thing. And I'm thinking, gosh, it's horrible. This is horrible, right? So I really appreciate it that you students said, we don't want that portrait here. We don't want that name on the side of our building anymore, and that we need to do something different. And while I was campaigning in 2019, I also had a few people on the campaign trail ask me about the name of the district, and they said, do you think that this name is appropriate? And do you think this name should change? And I said, if I'm elected, I will have a conversation within the community about the name, and then I will do what we can to get that name changed, if that is the will of the community. So we held 3 town hall meetings. We engaged members of the community to come in and share with us their thoughts on the name of the district being Lee, and to give us suggestions on names that we should change it to. And the community, these 3 town hall meetings, basically said the name needs to change. It's a perception that it's connected to Robert E. Lee. That's not a good thing, because this community has many diverse members, and Robert E. Lee didn't support diversity, right? He had a totally different position on that. And it was my pleasure to make the motion to the board to change it, and it was my pleasure to see the name come off the side of the sign in the front of the building. It's come off the sign in the front of my door. It's off of the letterhead. It's off of my business cards. So I'm just delighted to see Franconia listed there instead.
That's pretty awesome. So previously, you set up a routine traffic stop situation for students learning to drive, so they could overcome the fear of or an anxiety with dealing with police. What was your motivation to do this?
Yeah, so I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee for the Board of Supervisors, and I'm working on like a whole bunch of reforms. We're trying to make the police department more transparent and more accountable. We know that there are things that we need to do to reduce the use of force in our community, particularly against our minority members. And if you look at the results that were done of the study, University of Texas, it showed there's some specific issues in certain parts of our police district stations, that they are more likely to use force against minority members, Asian, African American, Hispanic. And what we learned, which I thought was great, is that there are things that you can do to fix that. One, you can make sure all the officers get trained on de-escalation. So you basically teach them how to reduce their use of violence by using patience, time, distance, cover, and communication. Basically talk to the people that you are interacting with, and if there's no threat to the person themselves, they don't have a weapon, and they don't present a threat to themselves or to others, then you can take time and try to figure out what's going on with the person. And if you need to get professional help, if you need someone who has substance abuse or mental health training to help you as a police officer, you can do that as well. So these things we learned in that report, and then I realized, even as a young man, when I was in my 20s, when I graduated from college and bought my first vehicle, I bought a little SUV, or maybe not a little one, a big SUV, and I would drive it in the city of Alexandria, and I got pulled over like multiple times, like just randomly got pulled over. And it's kind of scary. It's scary when the police pull you over because you're like, why are they doing this? Your heart's beating fast and you get nervous. It's just a natural thing. And I realized that it might be helpful if we can help our students, do a mock traffic simulation. So they have the police kind of pull up behind them in a police car, they put the sirens on, they walk up to them, they ask them for license and registration, and we help walk the student through what to do. Like we tell them, slowly reach and let the police officer, you're reaching to get in the glove compartment, you're gonna pull out your license and registration, you're gonna present that to them, you put your hands on the steering wheel, you keep them visible so that they can see, just things that can make it better for the student and then also better for the officers because they know what the student's doing. We also realize that kids who have either developmental issues or anxieties or other problems, it's important that we train the police on how they interact with those members of the community too. So we had special sessions that we did with the ARC of Northern Virginia so that they would have the parents bring their kids and they would go through the same mock simulation. And many of the parents said to me, really appreciated it because their kids were really nervous. And like one of the young men, I watched him, we coached him before, explained to him what he should do. Like when they pull you over, you slowly let them know you're gonna reach for your license and registration. And so when the officer walked up, he forgot everything. He was like nervous and we said, okay, it's okay. Yep, take your time, just catch your breath. And he felt like it was a real stop and you could see how he acted. So he learned and his mom got to watch him do it and then she can help reinforce it if he gets in that situation in the future. So we thought it was a good way to just prepare people. And the last thing I'll say on it is that we are asking the schools to make it a part of the driver's ed curriculum so that students, when they go through driver's ed, they get the opportunity, if they're inclined, they can participate in a mock traffic stop as well.
That's all we have for you today.
Thank you for coming and letting us speak to you.
Sure.
Do you have any closing remarks that you would like to tell our students?
Yeah, I'll just say if you ever have interest in interning, we accept interns in our office, so please feel free to reach out to my office if you have interest in doing that. Second, I'll say, if there are issues that you want me to be aware of, concerns in the district, feel free to share those with myself. And I'll say, I'll be running for re-election. You might see me out and about. If I knock on your door or wave, please stop and talk to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lusk.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Enjoyed it very much. Thank you both.
Yeah.
It was awesome. You guys had great questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, bye Lancers.